Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, reading The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Without further ado, returning to The Picture of Dorian Gray, as read by Lord Naren White. All I ask of you is to perform a certain scientific experiment. You go to hospitals and dead houses, and the horrors that you do there don't affect you. If in some hideous dissecting room or fetid laboratory you found this man lying on a leaden table with red gutters scooped out in it, you would simply look upon him as an admirable subject. You would not turn a hair. You would not believe that you were doing anything wrong. On the contrary, you would probably feel that you were benefiting the human race, or increasing the sum of knowledge in the world, or gratifying intellectual curiosity, or something of that kind. What I want you to do is simply what you have often done before. Indeed, to destroy a body must be less horrible than what you are accustomed to work at. And remember, it is the only piece of evidence against me. If it is discovered, I am lost, and it is sure to be discovered unless you help me. I have no desire to help you. You forget that. I am simply indifferent to the whole thing. It has nothing to do with me. Alan, I entreat you, think of the position I am in. Just before you came, I almost fainted with terror. No, don't think of that. Look at the matter purely from the scientific point of view. You don't want to inquire where the dead things on which you experiment come from. Don't inquire now. I have told you too much as it is, but I beg of you to do this. We were friends once, Alan. Don't speak of those days, Dorian. They are dead. The dead linger sometimes. The man upstairs will not go away. He is sitting at the table with bowed head and outstretched arms. Alan! If you don't come to my assistance, I am ruined. Why? They will hang me. Alan, don't you understand? They will hang me for what I have done. There's no good in prolonging the scene. I refuse absolutely to do anything in the matter. It is insane of you to ask me. You refuse absolutely? Yes. The same look of pity came into Dorian's eyes. Then he stretched out his hand and took a piece of paper and wrote something on it. He read it over twice, folded it carefully, and pushed it across the table. Having done this, he got up and went over to the window. Campbell looked at him in surprise, and then took up the paper and opened it. As he read it, his face became ghastly pale, and he fell back in his chair. A horrible sense of sickness came over him. He felt as if his heart was beating itself to death in some empty hollow. After 2 or 3 minutes of terrible silence, Dorian turned around and came and stood behind him, putting his hand upon his shoulder. I am so sorry, Alan, he murmured, but you leave me no alternative. I have a letter written already. Here it is. You see the address. If you don't help me, I must send it. You know what the result will be, but you are going to help me. It is impossible for you to refuse now. I tried to spare you. You will do me the justice to admit that. You were stern, harsh, offensive. You treated me as no man has ever dared to treat me. No living man. At any rate, I bore it all. Now it is for me to dictate terms. Campbell buried his face in his hands, and a shudder passed through him. Yes, it is my turn to dictate terms, Alan. You know what they are. The thing is quite simple. Come, don't work yourself into this fever. The thing has to be done. Face it and do it. A groan broke from Campbell's lips, and he shivered all over. The ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece seemed to him to be dividing time into separate atoms of agony, each of which was too terrible to be borne. He felt as if an iron ring was being slowly tightened around his forehead, and as if the disgrace with which he was threatened had already come upon him. The hand upon his shoulder weighed like a hand of lead. It was intolerable. It seemed to crush him. Come, Alan. You must decide at once. He hesitated a moment. Is there a fire in the room upstairs? He murmured. Yes, there's a gas fire with asbestos. I will have to go home and get some things from the laboratory. No, Alan. You need not leave the house. Write on a sheet of notepaper what you want, and my servant will take a cab and bring the things back to you. Campbell wrote a few lines, blotted them, and addressed an envelope to his assistant. Dorian took the note and read it carefully. Then he rang the bell and gave it to his valet, with orders to return as soon as possible and to bring the things with him. When the hall door shut, Campbell started and, having got up from the chair, went over to the chimney-piece. He was shivering with a sort of ague. For nearly 20 minutes, neither of the men spoke. A fly buzzed noisily about the room, and the ticking of the clock was like the beat of a hammer. As the chime struck 1, Campbell turned around and looking at Dorian Gray, saw that his eyes were filled with tears. There was something in the purity and refinement of that sad face that seemed to enrage him. You are infamous, absolutely infamous, he muttered. Hush, Alan, you have saved my life, said Dorian. Your life? Good heavens, what a life that is! You have gone from corruption to corruption, and now you have culminated in crime, in doing what I am going to do, what you force me to do. It is not of your life that I am thinking. Ah, Alan, murmured Dorian with a sigh, I wish you had 1,000th part of the pity for me that I have for you. He turned away as he spoke and stood looking out at the garden. Campbell made no answer. After about 10 minutes, a knock came to the door, and the servant entered, carrying a mahogany chest of chemicals, with a small electric battery set on top of it. He placed it on the table, and went out again, returning with a long coil of steel and platinum wire and 2 rather curiously shaped iron clamps. Shall I leave the things here, sir? He asked Campbell. Yes, said Dorian. And I am afraid, Francis, that I have another errand for you. What is the name of the man at Richmond who supplies Selby with orchids? Harden, sir. Yes, Harden. You must go down to Richmond at once, see Harden personally, and tell him to send twice as many orchids as I ordered, and to have as few white ones as possible. In fact, I don't want any white ones. It is a lovely day, Francis, and Richmond is a very pretty place. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother you about it. No trouble, sir. At what time shall I be back? Dorian looked at Campbell. How long will your experiment take, Alan? He said in a calm, indifferent voice. The presence of a third person in the room seemed to give him extraordinary courage. Campbell frowned and bit his lip. It will take about 5 hours, he answered. It will be enough time, then, if you are back at 7:30, Francis. Or stay, just leave my things out for dressing. You can have the evening to yourself. I am not dining at home, so I shall not want you. Thank you, sir, said the man, leaving the room. Now, Alan, there's not a moment to be lost. How heavy this chest is. I'll take it for you. You bring the other things. He spoke rapidly and in an authoritative manner. Campbell felt dominated by him. They left the room together. When they reached the top landing, Dorian took out the key and turned it in the lock. Then he stopped, and a troubled look came into his eyes. He shuddered. I don't think I can go in, Alan, he murmured. It is nothing to me. I don't require you, said Campbell coldly. Dorian half opened the door. As he did, he saw the face of the portrait grinning in the sunlight. On the floor in front of it, the torn curtain was lying. He remembered that the night before, for the first time in his life, he had forgotten to hide it, when he crept out of the room. But what was that loathsome red dew that gleamed wet and glistening on one of the hands as though the canvas had sweated blood? How horrible it was, more horrible, it seemed to him for the moment, than the silent thing that he knew was stretched across the table. The thing whose grotesque misshapen shadow on the spotted carpet showed him that it had not stirred, but was still there as he had left it. He opened the door a little wider and walked quickly in, with half-closed eyes and averted head, determined that he would not look even once upon the dead man. Then, stopping down and taking up the gold and purple hanging, he flung it over the picture. He stopped, feeling afraid to turn round, and his eyes fixed themselves on the intricacies of the pattern before him. He heard Campbell bringing in the heavy chest and the irons, and the other things that he had required for his dreadful work. He began to wonder if he and Basil Hallward had ever met, and, if so, what they had thought of each other. "Leave me now," said Campbell. He turned and hurried out, just conscious that the dead man had been thrust back into the chair and was sitting up in it, with Campbell gazing into that glistening yellow face. As he was going downstairs, he heard the key being turned in the lock. It was long after 7 o'clock when Campbell came back into the library. He was pale but absolutely calm. "I have done what you asked me to do," he muttered. "And now, goodbye. Let us never see each other again." "You have saved me from ruin, Alan. I cannot forget that," said Dorian simply. As soon as Campbell had left, he went upstairs. There was a horrible smell of chemicals in the room, but the thing that had been sitting at the table was gone. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.